Hey everybody, welcome back to the 7th episode here of the Shooting Time Podcast. Just running a little intro here before I get into the our discussion today with Mr. Ryan Graves. Fun conversation that I had with him. Hopefully you guys like it. Maybe a little bit different than some of my last ones, but then again, I guess it's probably somewhat along the same lines of what we've been doing. So hopefully everybody likes that. Obviously, if you're listening, I'm gonna assume that you do. So let me know on that kind of stuff. If everyone has any suggestions or whatever, feel free to drop an email on that stuff. I love to hear about. So, and on the podcast side of life here, this one's coming out a couple of days later than I was hoping for. You have to forgive me. Our duck season just opened this past Saturday, and I've been obviously pretty busy with that. As believe it or not, I was duck hunting, so we've been out almost every day, and just actually finished up a really almost world-class teal shoot here this morning. Had a beautiful southeast winds, sun on our back, perfect skies, cool little hole, and me and my buddy each shot our 8 teal this morning, a bunch of green wings along with our 2 bonus blue wings each. So really fun day. And not something I usually do is just target teal, but man, that was fun. So while I'm recording this, I'm also hunting flies here in my living room as we're that time of year when the flies are moving in. So you have to forgive a few smacks every once in a while. But we will get down to business here. If I could ask a favor, everyone, if you've listened to this and if you enjoy it, I'd love if you could give me a rating on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever the heck it is that you may be listening to this. That does help people find it a little bit as it brings it up a little higher in the rankings when people search. So if you could throw a 5-star rating on it, that would be awesome. If you think it's less than that, then just don't even rate. But no, if you could do that, that would be awesome. Definitely appreciate it. If you have any friends that listen to podcasts, let them know about it. So with no further ado, we will get down to business here. Thanks everyone, and have a good start to your seasons. For those of you that are up north. The rest of you, sorry. All right, hey everybody, welcome here to the 7th episode of the Shooting Time Podcast. I've got a guest on today that I've known for probably almost 20 years, maybe not quite that long. We keep in touch occasionally, and he's been a guy that I've wanted to get on the show. He's just kind of a wealth of knowledge in the waterfowl world, both on hunting and history as far as that goes. We met, and actually this is an oddly timed episode based on how we met. We met at in the pit at Tim Grounds' hunt club, probably in about 2002 or 2003, while I was on a trip with a friend at the time to the Avery International Goose Calling Contest. And we stayed at Tim's house and hunted at his place a few days, and actually stayed at my guest here, it's Ryan Graves. We stayed at his house a night or two as well. And I kind of just knew back then that we were on the same wavelength as far as hunting and just kind of our thoughts on the background of it went, even though we were both much younger men at that point in time. Yeah, big time. I would have been, probably 23 maybe back then. You were probably younger than that even.
Yeah, I'll be 40. I'll be 40 in December.
Yeah, so you're just a couple years younger than me. But anyways, Ryan's a great guy. He's do the hunts you're out of Kentucky right now, correct?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Marion, Illinois, there by the Crab Orchard Refuge. But now I live in Mayfield, Kentucky, which is about 25 minutes south of Paducah and about 45 minutes north of Reelfoot Lake.
All three of those, Marion, Reelfoot, and Paducah, I would say are huge, huge places in the history of the waterfowl world. And that's kind of what Ryan, like what I really wanted to talk to Ryan about. I mean, he's definitely a good hunter and that, but his real connection that I kind of wanted to tap into here is his knowledge and info on the history of the waterfowl world. It's kind of one of his big thing. And I saw he sent me a picture of the room that he's in as we're recording this right now. And it's kind of a super memorabilia filled space with calls and decoys and pictures. And you don't have your boat in there though, do you?
No, it's if it would fit in here, I would have it in here, but no, like then that's funny. But I bought that boat and like my wife, she's like, what are you gonna do with that, or well, why do you need that? Like, not that she cares or anything, but I'm like, because it's cool.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I just want it.
Well, you said there's like I think we talked earlier. There's really no reason never to buy another duck boat. I think I have currently technically 5 boats that I would consider to be boats that I utilize for duck hunting, and I still think that I need another 2 or 3 to really complete everything that I want. So like, you can never questioning why any duck boat is needed is probably futile in the mind of a duck hunter.
Yeah, exactly.
What actually was the model of that one?
I'm really not sure who made it. Like say, back then, so many, hunters and stuff, they would make their own stuff. You just couldn't go out and buy some of that stuff. But like I say, the guy that I got it from, I just always wanted something like that. And he said it was his great grandfather's, and it was mainly used up around up on the Horicon Marsh,
which is in Wisconsin, a pretty well known hunting area in almost kind of like central Wisconsin, I think, west.
Yeah, central. it's kind of like a little bit south central, and which I kind of thought that was neat because hunting geese around Crab Orchard in my teens, late teens, you always heard about everybody says that Horicon's stacking up with birds. So, that was, and the old timers used to say once they left Horicon, they never stopped till they got to Marion.
Yeah, so that's right. So, it's right in the path. Now they probably, they have to leave Horicon because I'm sure that freezes over, but they probably don't make it to Marion anymore. So,
no, not
like they used to.
Yeah, definitely not like they used to. I can't really say a whole lot for sure on like the, what the hunting's like around there anymore. I don't know that I went back and hunted at home, and I don't know, it's probably been 10 or 12 years. I don't know, more than anything, even growing up around there, like I was always a duck hunter first and a goose hunter second. We never goose hunted until duck season went out in January. It usually went out around the first week of January. Then we would goose hunt. So, but like ducks have always been my primary focus. But no, they definitely don't come down like they definitely don't come down like they used to. But I think some clubs and stuff still
they still shoot
some, so but nothing like old times.
I've hunted. To me, the South. To me, Marion is in the South, and I would say I've hunted Southern Illinois, Arkansas a handful of times, Oklahoma a couple times, and to me, the one thing I've found about guys in the South that when they say that there's no ducks anymore, or the ducks aren't down, or whatever it might be, that when they say that there's no ducks, that's an entirely different world than when we say there's no ducks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when we say there's no ducks, there literally might be no ducks. Yeah. But when I've been in all three of those places, and they say there's no ducks or there's no geese. I said at Tim's place that year, and we watched thousands upon thousands of geese go over our heads, and the whole talk, anybody talked about how there was no geese there. I'm like, there's plenty of geese. It's just they're probably educated enough that they've been there long enough that it's tough. But there was definitely plenty of geese, and I've been in Arkansas when guys are saying there's no ducks, and I've watched tens upon tens of thousands of ducks pour out of a refuge. So it's an entirely different frame of mind when people say that there's no ducks. So I always find that humorous, but
it's a different world down here.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just it's the landing place for all of the birds to be there. So and they have to get there at some point. There's only so much open water. I mean, there's no question that the migrations have changed, but in the end, only so many of them stay up north anymore. I mean, even where
I mean, like I say, as far as geese go, I mean, they really don't make it much. The weather's got to be really brutal for them to leave Chicago. No, I mean, now ducks and snows and specks, that's a different story.
Yeah, they just go.
Yeah, they just go. I mean, the Canada, just by nature, they're just big lazy birds, and
as far as they have to go, that's all they're going to do.
Exactly, they go as far as they have to go, and like I said, we just, December, like mid-December of the year of 2000 was, the last time that I think the geese came down in huge, significant numbers. I think just Crab Orchard, that year, I know it had like 225,000 Canadas on it. And, I bet you there hasn't been that many counted on that refuge total, if you totaled up all the years since then.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's just crazy because we actually see, since I've moved to South Dakota 10 years ago, we see less Canadas come through without a doubt. And you hear about birds in North Dakota, and those things, they're hardy enough that the fact that they don't push out of Bismarck is where it ends up being on the Missouri River. And they sit in that just brutal weather. It's just unbelievable. You watch them. Like I'll drive around on days when it's 10 below, and you see, a couple thousand geese just curled up, sleeping with their head tucked under their wing, snow piled up on top of them, and they have a snowdrift behind them from the dang wind and cold, and it doesn't seem to bother them, and they go out and feed their one time a day, and they don't move. But anyways, the goose migration isn't necessarily exactly what I want to talk about today, but or lack of goose migration.
Yeah, man, and don't get me wrong, I like to shoot a Canada goose, but I'm a duck hunter.
Yeah, ducks. Yeah, I'm the same. I duck hunt I goose hunt when there's not. Yeah. When there's not, and I'm goose hunting when I'm duck hunting, but the place we choose,
exactly. Like I say, we if we're duck hunting and geese, like we'll hunt them, but to really just primarily go set out in the middle of a field in Southern Illinois, like with 3 or 4 dozen full bodies anymore. I mean, those days are over. As a matter of fact, like all the places that I've even, had to hunt, back home, are now been replaced by apartment complexes or, another distribution center, which I was thinking about today, like with Tim's passing, that's kind of been weighing heavy on me today. Just, he always told me that like, if I ever wanted to come back home and hunt, I always had a place to go. And I was thinking about it that day, like, well, maybe I should have taken him up on some of that more the last, 10, 12 years, and I just didn't do it.
It's one of those things that I kind of want to get into some stuff with Tim, maybe just briefly here in a bit. And it's one of those things that you don't think of happening until it happens, and of course it's too late. And a guy could be very philosophical about a lot of that and just think of things, but I mean the main thing is that a guy just got to take advantage of stuff when it's there, especially when it comes to people that mean a lot to you, because that's the stuff that comes and goes quick. And and there's no way to get it back when it's gone. So
Yeah, that's a fact. I mean, I hadn't, I considered, Tim to be a great friend, but, like, just, you don't realize how fast, life goes by. I stopped thinking about it. I seen him back in July at, a call show we had in DuQuoin. I don't know, we probably talked 25, 30 minutes, but that's the first time I've, really seen him and had a good conversation and, in several years. But I'll tell you, man, this morning, like, I woke up 6 o'clock in the morning and I looked on Facebook and
yep.
I read that and I'm like, oh shit. Like, I mean, it really took me back. And like, then at first I thought, when I was still half asleep when I read it, I'm like, are they talking about Tim or Tim's dad, Bill? Like
yeah.
Then I read it again. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, isn't that it? I woke up and I did the same thing. I read it. And the weird thing, I wasn't shocked actually, because when I read it, it didn't say the cause. And so I thought, oh man, a heart attack or something.
Yeah.
He wasn't a model of great health by any means. And
No.
So I wasn't surprised to hear that, other than the fact that it was just sudden, Then I read the reason, like, oh man, that's just not what you'd expect. And yeah, because I mean, he wasn't terrible old by any means. He must have been in his low 60s.
No, I think Tim was 60 or 60 or 61. But man, I mean, we talk about the geese not coming down and stuff anymore, but and so many of these, like all the old clubs and stuff, they all they all set up for ducks now, and they have great success. They've replaced their goose hunting with ducks, but Tim loved goose hunting so much, just say I did go home or something for a day at Christmas or something if my parents were home, and which they winter in Florida now, so like during hunting season, like there's really not a whole lot of need to go back home, but you drive by Tim's and you look out there and there'd be like 500 or 600 of his shadows out there. Like, I mean, there might have only been 500 geese in the refuge, but Timmy was hunting them.
Oh, that's awesome. I love like that drive to go after him. Yeah, that would have been his small spread if he only had 500 decoys out.
Oh yeah. I mean, they'd have been up there. He'd have been calling everybody he knew to, if he thought they were coming down, and they'd have filled, there'd have been 2,500 to 3,000 out there, I reckon. That's
what I remember. That photo I posted on my Instagram today, a photo of a buddy of mine, and then Tim sitting in his pit, and then Ryan looking back down into the pit, and it was, I feel like there was closer to 5,000 that day that we were out there. I think that's what he said when we were hunting it. Because I remember when we drove up to his place and you looked, and it was just a big black hole of goose decoys. And I don't I mean, and the cool thing about it was, well, back then there weren't the brands that there are now, but every brand that was ever made, there was some of those decoys out there, and a lot that weren't brands. They were just his homemade black silhouettes. I mean, thousands and thousands of those. And then, I mean, there's G&H's, and there was, I think there would have been Avery's back then, but there was Herders, and there was Flambeaus, Carry Lights, a bunch of Higdons, because he was big with Higdon then.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, there was everything under the sun. So I thought
a lot of G&H. Tim loved G&H decoys too.
I remember he had a bunch of their shells sitting right around the pit, and on the pits probably, for that matter. So that was.
I mean, he was. I mean, love him or hate him, I mean, nobody could ever take away. I mean, Timmy was passionate about. He loved duck and goose hunting.
Oh man, like I could see that even in the few days I hunted with him. I actually think I only hunted out there 2 days. I think the day that we hunted, it was just the 4 of us in the pit, and then I hunted the next day. I don't know if you were there or not, but I think Ben Stoner was with you. Yeah, Ben Stoner was in the pit, and another friend of Tim's, I don't remember the guy's name, from the area. And then in the next pit over was Hunter and Kyle Ranella and one other guy. And I remember listening, I sat for a minute and just listened to what the calling sounded like as a flock would come out. I mean, you had like 8 of the top best goose callers, not included in that, but 8 of the top best goose callers in the country, blowing at these things, and you would watch them go overhead just like anybody else calling at them, and they wouldn't. And most of them, we would never turn or anything. And I remember just the things he would say. It just showed how much time he had spent doing that and studying them and paying attention to what he had done and what worked and what didn't work, how the birds reacted. So I remember thinking that he didn't have any secret ways to make a goose turn, compared to anybody else, but yet he knew what was and what wasn't going to work. I think more so than most people probably would. So
yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, like I say, you get that when hunting, the same spot all the time. I mean, I know where we hunt day in and day out, I mean, if we bring somebody new, they might point up there and be like, oh, there's some ducks, or, and we won't even pay any attention to them because, what are going to be good working birds and what are not going to be. And Tim could do that there at his place.
Yep. I'm just going to say, what? It's my favorite word that when I hunt the river down by home here, we just call them workers. And I think it's a Barney Califf term actually. And, if there's some birds we won't even call at, and the guys that are with that don't hunt with us much, you can tell they're antsy and they're, getting fidgety because we're not calling. I'm like, we can call at them, but I'll promise you they're not going to do anything. And yet the next flock that doesn't look a whole lot different, but yet they're going to do it just by little mannerisms that either how their wing beats are, a height change of 50 feet.
Yep.
So yeah, but yeah, I noticed that with him. He had, without a doubt, he had a it was clear. I mean, he's the guy that brought goose calls to prominence, really. I mean, like you could say that the Hesses did it or the Olts did it, but I mean, they didn't have the impact that Tim did. So
yeah, I mean, Tim by no means invented the goose call, but I'll say Tim perfected the goose call.
Yeah, perfected it and had a way to bring it to people in a way that without a doubt no one else had ever done before.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, I can't think of what his first instructional video was called, but I mean, I used to have that thing memorized word for word and note for note in terms of, what he said and what he did. And I remember back then, this was in the days of the half breed, thinking if I could only sound like that someday. Well, then,
I know.
And then someday I did sound like that. Well, by then he had moved on to a whole nother level, and I mean, he was the guy that you emulated when you were trying to blow a goose call. If you goose hunted from 2000 on, up until YouTube came about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was, this afternoon I was looking at Facebook, and I don't know if you saw that Facebook video of him on there when he was blowing the old flute.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, a few people had just shared it today. I don't know. I think it was from May of 2017. On his page, Tim had said that, a couple of people have asked him to blow a flute call, and run through a series, and just, I don't know. And for whatever reason, I mean, I used to be able to blow one until the short reeds come out. Now that I learned to blow a short reed, I forgot how to blow a flute call. Then to be honest with you, we don't blow into goose calls enough, in which, I mean, I can still blow a goose call, but I can tell you, I can't blow one like I used to when we used to hunt them all the time.
For sure.
But Tim picked up that flute call, and I'll tell you, I just listened to it, just made the hair stand up on your neck.
Well, he blows it like a flute call. Because there's a difference. Because I can blow his guide's best, and there's a dude that I watch on Instagram that blows one a lot, just Jordan Keel from Minnesota, and he blows a flute call, but he blows it similar to how I do, and it's like a short reed. It doesn't have that quite the hollow sound and the I don't know what you call it, like where you go from the low to the high. It was more like an arching sound, overarching sound than what a short reed is. Short reed's got that sharp thing, whereas if you blow a flute call like you should blow a flute call, it's got that big hollow different sound. And when you listen to him blow it, it sounds so different than what anybody does today. So
it just sounds so cool.
I just find that.
I literally have, like in modern terms, like in the last 15 years, have interest in listen to all the calling contests and all that goes on. But when I was, a teenager, 17, 18, 19, we used to go to the, the Winchester, whatever all those goose calling contests were called, Marion. And,
yep.
And that's back when they all blew the, the flutes.
Yep.
And, gosh, and just listen to those guys back then, blow those flute calls, man, I used to think that was just the coolest thing in the world.
That was like the Gary McCree, Brandon
exactly.
Fletcher.
Gary McCree and Alan and Richie McKnight.
Yeah,
and,
Richie.
Yeah, Altie Lanham, John Pisoni.
I forgot about him. Wasn't Brandon Fletcher big on the flute call?
Oh, yeah, Brandon Fletcher, man. You talk about just a bloody dude.
Yeah. That area, Marion has produced so many big-time and well-known goose hunters that
Fletcher was from Central Illinois, and like saying him and Kelly and Kelly Powers and John Ed and them, they're all good friends. He'll come down and hunt with us. I don't know, he probably hasn't in a couple of years, but man, I just love when Fletch comes down. I mean, he just he's just a killer. We have a blast.
Who was I talking to yesterday about? Oh, a friend of mine that I went on a turkey with is about guys that are just killers and you just have that instinct. And you love to hunt with them because it's such a different experience than with someone who doesn't have it. And if you have it, the guy that has it within minutes of hunting with them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I would assume he had it. And I mean, most of those guys that were from that area, especially back then. I mean, they're the ones that I know. I'm sure there's a lot of good goose hunters and callers that are from that area that are newer. I just don't know. But man, listening to those guys on some of those old videos and at contests.
Troy Dishner, I remember Troy Dishner.
Yep,
and,
I remember him.
Trying to think of a few others that, Trent Allman, Smoothie.
That's one I don't.
He's a friend of ours down there. He would, he blew in some for a while, but and he still does a lot of judging and stuff. But man, back then, like, and I don't want to judge anybody. I'm not like, I don't even go to them. But back then, like, you went to these calling contests and like Troy Dishner would come out there with a full blown, cornfield camo suit on, and it's just like, but everybody back then, they were just hardcore hunters, and that's what they did to extend their season.
Well, it's the goose calling world specifically has changed from, and I remember when people used to complain about this, even when I did it, is that they said that, goose calling isn't hunting related. And I was like, that's baloney, because those guys, because the routines, you weren't going to blow exactly a goose calling routine, but the sounds that you blew, at least, even 10 years ago, were all things that were super effective at hunting. But now a lot of the stuff has gotten just that so quiet of a sound that it's not really effective for hunting unless you're working on birds from 5 yards to 4 yards. I mean, it's so
and that's
quiet.
I mean, like if
I
you're
love
comparing,
it. I love the sounds and it's cool. And I haven't played around enough to really nail some of that stuff. But like especially like the live goose type stuff, like that thing is. I mean, the sounds those guys make, I love it. It's cool. It just isn't super effective as a hunting tool, I don't think. But,
I've never really had much interest in like duck calling contests at all. But my interest that if I was going to have one and to choose one, it would be like the goose calling contest. Cause, if you think about it, like, like you just said, nearly all the sounds and all that you would hear come out of a goose call in a goose calling contest is something you can hunt with, and as a hunter, that's something I appreciate. I don't want to take anything away from the duck callers, but if you listen to a duck calling contest, a good portion of that stuff is not, and I understand, the point of a duck calling contest is to show just that you can control a duck call from the top to the bottom. But a lot of the sounds you hear, like all the highball and all that stuff, that's not realistic. Where, nearly everything you hear on
a goose call,
goose calling routine is something you can actually use hunting.
So, so I'll get your take on this. So do you think in a duck calling contest, you guys don't highball? Because we do sometimes. Maybe not. Maybe not the true ring. Maybe not the full blown ring. But a very aggressive, very close to high ball, if not a high ball. Not exactly what you would hear a dude stand on stage and do, but yeah, very similar to that. In some of our spots that we hunt, we do that when we're trafficking birds.
Yeah, and I could I could see that true, but I mean, I think that's gonna just a big difference on hunting situations. The main area that I prefer to hunt within our little duck club, is a timber hole, and so no, we don't. And we are mainly 90% hunting traffic, but
they're close.
They're close. We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But really, as far as our club goes, I don't really know that any of us could do that, because I don't think any of us blow a single reed duck call. Everybody's blowing double reed duck calls.
What call do you blow? I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, honestly, I still blow a DR85 that I've had, since. Really? And I've probably had it since 94 or 95.
Okay, so question. How does it smell?
It smells like skull 90% of the time.
Like what, scope?
What, skull, chewing tobacco.
Skull. Well, that's an improvement over what a regular DR85 sounds like, because my God, they are horrendous.
They are, they do. They got a puke smell to them, but and I can't blow one. I don't really blow one like they come out of the box. I kind of modify them a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But in the last couple of years, I've especially last year, I've never been into niches and fads and all that, and that's kind of what I took the whole cut down Mondo type stuff to be. But I'll tell you, I got one of those Mondo lights, the short ones.
Yep, that's what I blow too.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, man, it's changed my life.
I love that call.
I do too. I absolutely love it, and you can really break them down. But it's talking about, like within our little club that we've got some timber, then we've got some open fields, and like I said, nearly all of it we're hunting traffic, and a lot of times, instead of highballing the ducks, we blow goose calls at them.
Oh, really?
And like I said, we can break down ducks, big groups of ducks, better blowing a goose call than we can highball. And I guess so. I mean, we don't ever even try to do the highballing.
So, it's funny you say that about the goose call, because I never do it intentionally, but yet I can't tell you how many times over the years that, where we hunt on the river, we have a fair amount of geese and more ducks, but a fair amount of geese, and we'll be calling to the flock of geese, and we're in the mode that if we're calling the geese and we have ducks that are working, we immediately switch to duck calling. Mm-hmm. But we'll be calling the geese, and they're working, not working, and there's a few of us, and we're pretty loud goose callers and yada yada. And the next thing you know, someone looks, say, to the other side of the blind or the decoy spread, and you have a flock of mallards landing, or just about to.
Absolutely.
And I've thought about it, but I guess maybe never thought about, like, realized.
And it's something I hadn't. I would say 18, 20 years ago, I didn't really think about it, and I hunt day in and day out with the Powers brothers, Kelly Powers and his brother John Ed, and
they're decent goose callers.
Oh, you think?
I love Kelly. Kelly Powers' world, his routine from back in the day is without a doubt my favorite goose calling routine ever.
I'm telling you, Kelly's one of my best friends and hunting buddies, and I don't, not really having a, which I did follow all of his, goose call and all that back then, but Kelly is just one of those people, if you hear people talk about Kelly, thinking about how, he mastered goose calling. Well, Kelly's one of the smartest people I know. He, he's the most methodical person that you will ever meet. The way he broke down, figured out how to win all the calling contests and making the routines and all that. He does that in every aspect of his life. I don't care if it's cooking steak or
running a business.
Yeah, running a business or duck hunting. He's just very methodical about everything that he does. Which coming from Southern Illinois, I always had the mindset, I hunted a lot of, up in the Illinois River and all that too. And, which I was, I was always like the bigger, the better, I mean,
Yep.
that gum, I'd have decoys strung out for 3 miles if you'd let me, and Kelly's even taught me, like, he's just so methodical. He's like, think about doing things like, how about we do this with 200 decoys instead of 600? Let's just break down where we put each individual one. I mean, he's just a very methodical, smart person, smart hunter. And which is funny, which his brother, John Ed, which is just a phenomenal hunter, which he's a little bit more like, like hammer down, let's throw all the decoys out we can get.
Yep.
Which where Kelly's like, but both methods, are going to work and kill birds, but it's just
Time and a place for each.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I interrupted you about the goose calling at ducks and just our duck calling in general. But yeah, I think that's one of the kind of the cool things about getting out and hunting different places, not even just different spots within your area, but hunting different locales. You learn so much in hunting with different people and how things work. And it's just the things that you take for granted at home may or may not be a key to success in another spot, or it may be an absolute failure in another spot. So,
absolutely. I mean, I can tell you from, like all the hunting we do in our club, or the few spots that we have, like I say, we're always hunting traffic, more or less than, one of my best friends, John Stevens, I'll go down to his place and hunt with him in Arkansas. And, and it's, it's a complete different animal, as to where we're running big spreads and a lot of aggressive calling, not a lot of high ball, but just, aggressive calling to where, they'll go out and throw out 3 or 4 dozen decoys and just, you got to call, but it's just a complete different situation.
Like the traffic deal is my favorite type of duck hunting. And it's to me, the most rewarding. Like I love when you roll out to a spot in the morning and you look and you say, okay, I think the ducks are flying over this path and this is the way the wind is, this is the way the sun is. We're going to hunt here. We're going to throw decoys out here. And you don't kick a single duck out of your spot. And yet you roll out of there with 15 or 20 or whatever it is, greenheads. Yeah. I think that's one of the most rewarding parts about duck hunting is bringing those ducks into a spot that they weren't in before. Not that I pass up opportunities to hunt the X or hunt the spot where they are, but I leave those hunts with a little bit of different feeling than I do when I'm just trafficking birds. I love that, breaking them down, making them come to where they weren't planning on coming there, but yet they're there, and then you shoot them.
I'll be honest. I'm the same way here. I'm a traffic hunter. I love hunting backwater, hunting river. But I don't know that I've ever really pulled into our hunting spot and jumped up birds.
Oh wow, we do have that time. I mean, here in South Dakota, we don't have enough, a lot of pressure. So there's definitely some days where there's days I've kicked out 5,000 mallards out of my spot, and then there's days where you might drive the whole 3 miles to get to your spot and you don't kick a single duck up, and yet you shoot them. So I have a bit of the extreme of both, depending on the day and the time of year.
That's one spot, and we got a couple other, like flooded fields and stuff. You go in there and run some birds out. Just 2 different locales. So.
Yeah, big time difference there. Oh man. So did you ever take any of your like collectible calls with you?
I don't. For one, they don't really sound all that good. Nobody really ever clicks.
That's kind of what I was going to ask. That's kind of what I was going to lead into.
Yeah. But nobody collects them for the way they sound. I can promise you that. But back then, I'm really into when it comes to collecting, I'm really into the early stuff. And back then, traditionally, that they didn't call ducks like we do now. Like a lot of times they would use them kind of like, like you would use like an owl hooter or something, turkey hunting. They use them more as a locating device because, basically all you wanted to do was find out where they was at. And these guys, they just walk up and, and shoot into them at night.
Oh,
wow. Like, back in the market hunting days, so, because you got to think about it as an aspect of, back then, some of these things, they were used more as a tool to put, like we say to put meat on the table, but, that's in a different context than what it was back then because, a lot of these guys were market hunters. Yeah. They weren't going out there and hunting for sport.
The table they're talking about was in New York City or Chicago or.
Yes, absolutely.
Hundreds of miles away from where they were.
Yeah. Huh. Now, granted, some of the calls, like, I live in an area down here where, around Reelfoot Lake, which I don't hunt Reelfoot Lake. But just, that's just a kind of its own different world within itself. But, a lot of those guys still use metal reed calls and
so, that's not a thing here at all. And I've never,
it's really not anywhere else.
And I've never blown one. So what would be what's the practical difference in one in terms of sound or like how you would blow it?
The Reelfoot Lake metal reeds are going to traditionally be large calls, very large bore. And I can see where they work, they're just loud.
Yep.
Super loud, calling, the migrators in.
Yep.
But there's not, the metal reeds. There's not a whole lot of bottom end on them.
They're not ducky.
Yeah, they're not real ducky, and a lot of guys will use a plastic reed call, to finish birds, then use their metal reeds, for the high stuff, and.
So do you think? You think they're using them just truly because of the volume? Because then there's got to be some calls.
Volume is one thing, but more so than anything, it's tradition.
Because there's got to be current calls that are as loud, if not louder, than a call.
Oh yeah. But a lot of the guys still use them. Reelfoot Lake's one of those places that, the culture around there, there's a lot of guys that hunt Reelfoot Lake. They don't know that people duck hunt other places in the world other than Reelfoot Lake.
Well,
I'm not saying that as a slam, but what I'm saying is
I think that's a good thing.
It's a very traditional place, and I love the guys, to carry on the tradition of, there's guys out there that still use the old Reelfoot Lake boats, and it's neat.
I like that aspect of it, and the fact that they do just go on as if how it was, and not that. And this is kind of something I want to talk about too. Is maybe just the differences of how we view the past and that, but the fact that they do that and they don't pay attention to other stuff, because there's a group of there's places in the world that have waterfowl history, just whether it's good hunting or not, and we don't have that here. We have amazing waterfowl hunting in South Dakota and North Dakota, but no history. But you will never go. There's one town that I hunt by that's close, somewhat close. I'm not going to reveal that name, but it's a place where you can go and you will see some duck boats, and you'll see some decoys in people's yards, and maybe a duck on someone's mailbox or whatever. But like, I know when I go to Northeast Arkansas, every single house has got that 16-foot John boat, and people have duck decoys, and it's just like everywhere you go, you see guys in camo and dudes with stickers on their trucks, and you don't have that. Yeah. And I love, and even though that history is even different than like what I imagine Reelfoot Lake or the East Coast, like the Bay, Michigan, in Maryland, and that kind of stuff, the Chesapeake, where the people are into it, and it's more than even probably people who aren't the hunters are aware of it and part of it. So I think that's cool.
Around here, it's just a way of life. It'd be hard pressed, even if you find somebody that doesn't currently hunt. I bet you they've probably been in their lifetime.
Oh yeah.
at least a few times where they've got relatives that they do. Cause, around here, like, there's, right where I'm at, I'm actually in Mayfield, but like if you, it's kind of like an epicenter. If you go like an hour and a half radius all the way around, you've got, Southern Illinois, you've got the Boot Hill of Missouri, you've got Northeast Arkansas, Northwest Tennessee, West Kentucky, Southwest Indiana.
Wow. Yeah.
So you've got
probably 25% of the biggest locales in the country for waterfowl hunting right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like you say, it's just, there's a lot of public hunting opportunities. So, like I say, there's duck boats everywhere, it seems like most all the high school kids, have their duck hunting stickers in the back of their trucks and their exhaust, the loud exhaust.
I think that's a mandatory on a young duck hunter now.
Yeah. Probably got barrel stickers.
Mojo Outdoors or slay 'em and pray 'em or who knows, whatever they're gonna say.
And I'm just poking fun. We've all been there.
That's how it is. Yeah, that's just the way. That's the way of a duck hunter. It's part of the path to becoming a duck hunter. At some point, you have to be that part of it. So,
absolutely. I'm so far behind. I'm so far beyond it.
Oh yeah, I'm finding myself removed more and more. And part of it is because I'm not around it. Like when I was in Minnesota, there's a pretty good waterfowl hunting culture there. There's a lot of hunters in Minnesota. The history isn't as rich and the people aren't involved in it. I don't think as much. They hunt a lot, but I don't think the history is there. Because there's not a specific spot where it's located to. But I moved from there and I'm in South Dakota, and I think my level of ability of goose calling dropped 25% the minute I became a resident, not because of anything I did, just the fact that I wasn't around it. Like I didn't hear it every day. And I was the only guy that blew a goose call at a level like I was for a while, and I just quit doing it. And same with my duck. My duck calling maybe didn't get as bad, but I wasn't around it. And so if you don't see it every day and if you're not around it, it's just one of those things that kind of fades away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, on that note, so I love, because we were talking the other day a little bit just on Facebook there, and Ryan had actually sent me a post from somewhere with some duck calls up on auction that were originally from southern Minnesota, and we were kind of just chatting a little bit and saying that collecting waterfowl stuff for the most part isn't something that I actually ever have gotten into. I've always had an interest in it, but I've never really gotten the bug to do it. I don't collect decoys, and then I have plenty, but nothing collectible.
Well, don't get started, because man, it's a mudslide when you do.
That's what I'm kind of been afraid of, is that I'm going to do it and then it's just going to go over the top. And the same with calls. It seems if I do something, I go all in on it, and so I don't really do a lot of things half-ass. And calls, decoys,
that's my issue too.
Photos, all that kind of stuff, I would just love and just eat it up. Although I did buy a dozen older books that I want to read, and I've started finally tearing into those. But that's the kind of stuff that it's one thing I really want to do, get more into the whole history side of it. But I always wonder when I look at a photo of a black and white photo from 1940 of some guys duck hunting, and you read the comments about it and even my own initial thoughts about it, I always have to kind of temper them a little bit, because I always question on that kind of stuff if we're too sentimental about it. Maybe that's not exactly the word, but if we look at those photos and all the people that came before us with different set of glasses than what really it was, because I always picture, I used to be that way, and I thought, you know what, because what I think got me going is someone will post a photo of their grandpa, and they'll be like, oh, my grandpa was the hunter and that hunter. I'm like, that guy though, he was still out to kill ducks. He was using the latest technology available at his time, whether it was a boat or the gun or his calls, or he moved from paper mache decoys to foam decoys. His intention was the same thing as we do now, any of us do now. And it may have even been the guys that are over the top, I think, in terms of wanting to use the newest stuff and solely intended on killing. So I always wonder if maybe we have add just a touch bit too much of a rose-colored look back on some of the history of it. And with you being that guy, what was your take on that thought?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about it though, like, you know, like back then, like, you know, these guys were into it too, because at the end of the day, they were taking pile pictures in the 30s and 40s.
Exactly. Yeah, I think they're really no different people than the guys that we see posting pictures on Facebook now, or the kids that we see posting pictures on Facebook now, that you either love or you hate the individuals, or you love that guy and hate that guy. I mean, I
think it's a lot of the same thing. You know, just the difference is there's no social media back then.
There was no social media, and they're wearing canvas clothes rather than Gore-Tex. And photos
exactly.
Don't,
and you know, and you know, I read a lot of old Field and Stream magazines from, you know, the 20s and 30s and 40s, and you know, and it's not a whole lot different than what you would read in the Ducks Unlimited today. I mean, look at all the advertisements in them. I mean, because obviously hunters back then, they loved all the gadgets too.
Yeah, they were just as gadgety, I'm sure. I mean,
and if you look at like some of the old wooden decoys that, you know, that us collectors, you know, treasure so much, like, you know, especially the ones from the Illinois River Valley, like, you know, you'll see the ones from the Illinois River Valley, then you'll see the ones from the, you know, like the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which, you know, you know, they in the Illinois River Valley, they were making them to sell them, because, you know, the paint is a work of art, as to where, you know, a difference is, you know, they might have been making them in North Carolina to sell them too, but, you know, those, you know, they were making so many of them. I mean, a lot of them were just like logs with heads, basically. You know, like, you know, comparatively speaking, to Illinois boys, and like saying, I love, you know, vintage North Carolina birds too, but you know, it might just be a gray body and a red head, you know, with no detail, or Illinois stuff, you know, and you know, a lot of the stuff from the Northeast and all that, you know, is you know, very finely painted. But I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, Charles Purdue, which was one of the, you know, the most famous decoy makers of all time. If you look at his stuff, you know, like just you know, the fine paint jobs, and even like Robert Ellison's and all that, you know, like they didn't have to do that stuff to kill ducks.
No.
They were, you know, doing those fine paint jobs, you know, to appeal to people's eyes.
Well, they're the high-end goose decoys of the world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And
there was the guys that bought them, and there was the guys that bought it would have been pre-herders, but the cheapest, like the stuff you said, the North Carolina stuff that looked like a duck form, you know, and that's nowadays the hot buys, or the old flambeaus or carriers or something like that.
And you know, and that's I mean, but you know, even the Carolina birds, you know, they don't have a lot of detail in them, but man, they're just as collectible as, you know, the Illinois River Valley birds are, and you know, and a lot of the Canada stuff, and you know, and up to the north, and they bring big money, you know. You know, and one of the things I appreciate about like the North Carolina birds, like, is, you know, those guys love, you know, they love their heritage out there, and they're very, very passionate about it. And, you know, and they want to collect those birds. You know, those birds were made, you know, and out there too, you know, they weren't killing all the puddle duck species like we were. I mean, they were making big rigs of diver ducks.
Yeah, quantity.
So you know, so I mean, you couldn't just sit there and do all the detail and all the ducks they had to make, but like I said, those guys are passionate about them, and they collect them, and there's a huge market for them.
So, you know, like I said, I'm not super into the collectible side. I appreciate it, but I don't have a lot of specific knowledge about it. So, like when you say they bring a big money, I mean, what would be the average value of? What would be the peak, average, and minimum value of a collectible call or collectible decoy in your collection?
Well, like, in my collection, which I'm kind of, now duck call wise, I'll say is when it comes to collecting, I'm a vintage call collector first and a vintage decoy collector second. But, I'm kind of specific, in decoy wise, like what I like to hunt. The ones that I love are Illinois river birds. And that's just because I've hunted that area a lot. And, and I kind of like to collect stuff from areas that I've hunted.
Yep.
Now, as far as, like spreads on, like my decoys, I've got the Purdue's and, like say Burt Graves, which is no relation, but I don't have near the caliber of a decoy collection per se as I do a duck call collection, but I'm working on it.
It takes time. Well, for one, so one thing you were just telling me here earlier is that one thing you do is go around and gather pieces for other people as well, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm a collector, and like I say, I don't do anything half-ass, and by by trade, I'm a school teacher, so being a school teacher doesn't leave a whole lot at the end of the month for collecting old duck calls and decoys. So my collecting has to pay for itself. So I do consulting for several different collectors, and where I'll find calls and stuff for their collections, and I'll buy out larger collections, and but that's how I built my collection.
That's kind of cool. I like the fact that it's like, I think it's interesting that there's people that are experts in literally everything, and that you be an expert in vintage duck calls. I mean, there's people who are experts in probably solo cup, pong ball, or whatever. I mean, everything you can think of. But I just happen to be looking at solo cup on my fridge right now.
Like I say, not so much anymore. But back, like I said, I'm going to be 40. But back when I was 20, like I wanted to work in the waterfowl, industry. But I never really knew what my niche was. I didn't. Back then I thought, all I wanted to do was kill mallards.
Yep.
But you don't really get paid to do that.
And no one wants to pay me just to go hunt.
Yeah, exactly. So it took me a while, but so my connection with being involved in the waterfowling world is just through the collectible side of it. 80% I would say of that is high end collectible duck calls, and like I say, probably 20% of it's just decoys and the other stuff. But like I say, but I'm getting more into decoys than I ever have been. Like I think honestly, like on the duck call side, I'm very peculiar on what I want to collect. I don't want to put complete collections together. And I'm pretty close to having all the calls that I want. There's probably 20, 25 out there that I still want, but that's stuff that you just can't go out and buy.
You can't go to the store and just pick it up.
Yeah. So, so that's what, I kind of do things in steps. I'm kind of a methodical person, to an extent too. So, it's kind of like I worked on all my calls that I wanted. Now I've kind of moved on to decoys, and, obviously I still collect calls and all that, but I'll add the ones that I want in now that I'm working on my decoy collecting and stuff.
Do you do anything with current calls at all?
I really don't. And the funny part is, like,
it would be overwhelming at this point.
It would, and like, I'm not somebody that's eat up with duck calls. Like a duck call for what it is. Like my interest in duck calls is because they're is them being a historic waterfowling artifact.
Yeah.
Like I say, I'm not one that sits around the house and blows on duck calls and buys every new duck call that comes out and sits in a duck blind and just blows till,
till your friends can't stand you anymore.
exactly, and just blow to your ribs. I'm not that. But my interest in the calls and stuff is more of from just a historical point. Like I say, I mean, as far as like new calls go, I still got the old DR85 that I've had for probably close to over 15 years or better. And I got a Mondo and
I think you have to have a Mondo if you live south of like the Iowa border.
Yeah,
I think everybody that lives down there has one.
Yeah, and like I say, and for years I kind of thought, that's just a fad, Then
they're loud, they're aggressive, they're brash.
Exactly. Then I got to use them. I'm just like, oh man. Yeah. So
there's something to them. I carry a Mondo light on my lanyard too, and the layers, and those are the two. I just like them because they're loud and they're similar, different but similar in their effect on ducks.
Yeah, so. And I'll tell you, this kind of sounds cliche, and I hate like cliche stories, but like where I'm at, 20 miles to the west of me is the Mississippi River. Then 20 miles to the east of me is Kentucky Lake, which are just huge lakes.
Yep.
And it's all public hunting, and one thing that 20 years ago, I'd have never thought I'd have had an interest in, which I do now, is diver hunting.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, I mean, it's, I'm not going to go diver hunting when the mallards are down, but like when everything freezes up down here, like all of our stuff that, we got ice eaters and we can keep water open and stuff, but more often than not, the ducks just go sit somewhere and you just don't kill anything. So when that happens, I go to, I've gotten where we'll go to the lakes and put some diver spreads together, man. And we just had a blast shooting golden eyes and buffleheads and, just this last year talking about that Mondo, like, we're sitting on the bank of Kentucky Lake and a group of mallards flew over and I thought, and normally just something that like you would call out there, but they're not even going to even think about looking at you.
Yeah.
And I got to screaming on them with that Mondo. And I mean, they just flipped their asses inside out and they was on us in no time. I thought, like I said, I know that sounds cliche and just like one of those fig jam stories, but like,
it happens. It happens.
I mean,
it's fun.
I was just like, I was like, wow.
When it does it and it works, and then especially if you saw it one time and it happened to be that call, now it's in your head that it's the call, and that's what did it. Who knows? You could have had your DR85 and maybe did it, but the fact that it was with the Mondo,
I can tell you that I've tried it before and it didn't happen. Like so,
yep.
But
I'm the same way with certain stuff.
Yeah. So, but I'm a believer in them. I'm a believer in them.
I love that you brought up diver hunting, and it actually, I think, feeds in well just to kind of the history of duck hunting, because I'm without a doubt, I'm a mallard hunter. I mean, that's my thing, my bread and butter, and I like it because I can blow a duck call at them, and I can somewhat control the situation a little bit, but I don't diver hunt enough. I do shoot some here and there. But what happens for us is the divers are here at the same time that the mallards are. And I know it's the same thing with me buying an archery deer license, is that rut is when the mallards are here. And I never use my archery deer license, and I never use my diver decoys. And I always have both. But one thing I would love to be able to change in duck regulations is to have a diver limit and a puddler limit, so you could do both. So you could go shoot your mallards in the morning and go out in the afternoon, or vice versa, however you want to do it, and then go hunt divers, because it would be so fun to do that. And I've always said that I think that the guys that diver hunt tend to be more involved. This is my take. More involved in what we're talking about today is the history part.
More nostalgic
about hunting than the average mallard hunter. There's definitely there's some guys that do it, that are into it like that. But I think if you took a cross section of diver hunters and a cross section of mallard hunters and asked them how important history or nostalgia was to you, the diver hunters would rate quite a bit higher on that scale than the typical mallard or puddle duck hunter would.
Yeah. And you're probably right on that. But the funny part around here is like, everybody I would say 98% of the people in this area, are mallard hunters, puddle duck hunters.
Yep.
And, we got these big lakes over there, Kentucky Lake, which is, I don't know how much square miles it is, but it's huge.
Yep.
And at times, it holds a phenomenal number of divers. And the thing about it is the whole lake is pretty much public hunting. You can go anywhere you want, I'm not giving away any secrets here. And I don't want to sound like it's the most phenomenal hunting in the world, because it's not. But there's days you can go out there, man. You can just have a great diver hunt. But there's very few people out there that do it, and a lot of you will see some hunters at Kentucky Lake, but most of them are hunting back in the bays, try to kill a wood duck or a mallard or something like that.
Yep.
And believe me, if I go to Kentucky Lake, I'm not going out there to shoot a mallard or a wood duck.
Yep.
Like I said, the golden eyes, that gets addictive. And the thing about them is they kind of work like mallards. They don't circle like mallards, but they come in from high.
They do. And all of a sudden do it.
Yeah.
I remember
the buffies, they fly a foot off the water, and they're on you before you know it. But
yeah, because you don't see them on the horizon.
Yeah.
I was looking at who was it? It wasn't a Cuba print. It was I think it was questioned on there was a guy asked the question of what print it was, and it was a print of like a half dozen golden eyes coming in. I think someone said it was a moss print, and I looked at that print and that brought back so many memories. I remember the very first time that I ever shot a golden eye. I even saw him in a hunting situation. And I was in college and with a friend, and that was such a cool thing. The way they came in, the sound, the way they ripped into the decoys, and all I remember seeing was black and white, just in a flurry, and all of a sudden they're in the decoys, and we shot them right as they were landing, and we dropped a few of them, like 3 or 4 of them between two of us. And we barely knew. I knew what they were, but I'd never seen them. And that print, I remember that thing that brought back so many memories, and I've never had a print do that to me. I was like, God, I want to get a hold of that, and I should have emailed the guy to buy it, but I'm not exactly a goldeneye hunter, so I don't. But yet the print did actually mean something to me, so I do like goldeneyes, and they also mean, they're around at a cool time of the year. They're not going to be around for us in early September. They're here in late November, December. So,
but which is odd. Which I'm not going to say I'm not a goldeneye hunter. I guess I'm a guy that goes goldeneye hunting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
There would be a difference.
Yeah, you happen. You're an opportunist.
Yeah, I'm an opportunist when I say, because I live and die by the mallards and puddle ducks. Mainly mallards.
Yep.
But the funny part is, it seems like you can kill them from the beginning of the season till the end. It usually seems like the last month of the season is is not as good as the first month. The first 30 days. But
I suppose you guys open in mid-November, probably.
Yeah, no, we Kentucky opens up. Kentucky opens up on Thanksgiving Day. And it'll go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then come back in, have a week split. And Tennessee will be, it comes in that Saturday and Sunday for 2 days after Thanksgiving. Then it comes back in like about the 5th or 6th of December and goes all the way to the last Sunday in January.
Okay, so you guys are late. So that would be, your better hunting would be towards the end of our season, which means they would have already. That's when they're on the move through to you, so that would make sense. That would coincide.
Yeah. It seems like as far as mallard hunting and stuff goes, in Tennessee, it just seems like, we have better success in January than we do December. But like I said, but it also all that there's so many variables, that like it all depends on water and.
Well, this year for us already, like I was actually planning on going mule hunting again here tomorrow. A week ago, if you asked me, that's what I was going to be doing tomorrow. But we have really, really good duck numbers. I stumbled upon an area that's awesome. So I probably won't be doing that for at least a couple of weeks till those birds are shot up enough that maybe it peters out a little bit. But like typically, I mean, I think it was last year, this time of year, I took like a 70-mile drive on my way home from work one time, and I didn't see a single bird. Whereas, I mean, Christ, just the other day, I saw probably 2,000 to 3,000 on the spot I hunted on a public piece, and there was nobody else hunting it. So, yeah, like a year, 1 year can change, or a week within the season can change so much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you got.
And I saw, I guess those a couple nights ago, I saw in the Terry Swalls. He's a meteorologist, maybe out of Iowa or somewhere. Maybe I don't, maybe up there somewhere. But it looks like next week, like North Dakota and southern Saskatchewan, southern Manitoba, looks like we're going to be getting some weather. So
I was talking to a friend of mine about doing a hunt in a certain part of Montana. And he sent me back, because he lives there, or he's working there right now, and he sent me a weather forecast, and it was going to be 20 degrees one night and 18 the next. And I said, ugh, because I'm going with the intention of hunting some smaller, like small pothole type stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ugh, those two don't work together very well. So
yeah, it's killing me right now, because it's always a tough time of year for me. Like when. Like I was telling you the other day, like, I mean, here you are getting ready for opening day, and I mean, we're still 2 months away from.
I hear that a lot. Dude, come on up. You need to come up and chase some ducks here in about 3 weeks. They'll start getting good.
Yeah, I do have all next week off work, so
if you want, I got no options for you then, because our licenses, we'd have to hunt in a different, little bit different locale, because all of our licenses are.
I forgot how all that goes.
Yeah. But I do have a workaround for some of it, but not for this time of year.
Yeah, gotcha. No, it's just always just seeing like everybody's Facebook pictures of
we're full swing.
I'm kind of new to Instagram. I didn't really know how to do that until my wife kind of taught me last week.
I didn't do it till three years ago now. I started, and I don't hardly even touch Facebook anymore. Just there's too much baloney on there. And
there is, and like I say, there's one. If there's, if anybody's got any interest in old decoys, and this is the only reason I think I keep Facebook, is because there's a decoy page on there called Southern Decoy, and it is just some of the the most knowledgeable and top collectors in the country, and there's no bullshit. It's not like some of these call sites and just makes you just want to smash your head through a window. I mean, it's a good site. Now, honestly, if it wasn't for that, I would probably not even have Facebook. And but I've been thinking about it. I just want to find a way to just kind of promote the hobby of collecting. And my wife's like, do Instagram, that you don't have to all the bullshit that you do on Facebook.
It's way less. And the cool thing about it is that it's targeted. I think it's way easier to target what you're following there than it is, because you don't have the high school friends, as much. You don't have all that baloney of just the stuff that you feel like you're guilted into to following. You pick and choose who you want to follow. I mean, like. The people I follow, it's 100% almost duck photographers, duck hunters, maybe a couple bands that I like, and that's it. I don't follow any.
Exactly.
If someone posts stuff that I don't like, and if I don't know them, I'm like, oh, just done, and you're out of there. So it's been a super cool. I mean, for me, it's been a super cool way to connect with people and do that, and I've learned a ton off of it. Whether it's about hunting styles, places, people, all that kind of stuff. So I've noticed that you started to post a bunch of a lot of memorabilia stuff on there.
It, but I didn't even know. I'm not like an overly techie person, but I knew what hashtags were and all that, but I didn't really know what they were meant to do.
Yep.
So my wife's, so she had to, kind of walk me through that. But I'll tell you, I could see myself not even looking at. Other than that decoy page on Facebook, not even jacking with Facebook anymore.
That's kind of what I am now. I open it once a day or twice a day, maybe, just to kind of see if anything exciting is happening, and then move on to whatever else is going on.
And I do get, a lot of private messages through Facebook of if somebody finds old calls or decoys and stuff like that. So, I mean, I hate to get rid of it for that aspect.
Well, you say that. I actually use Facebook more as an email, but I wonder if you can delete your Facebook app and just keep Messenger. 'Cause that's probably all I really need. I use Facebook more just as my email client than I do email. Just seems easier to find people that way.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, so on the collectible side, do you think there's what kind of, like, I was going to say, this is one thing I think about, like the products of today and the marketing of today. Do you think there's anything out there currently in production, whether it's big production or handmade stuff, that's going to be highly collectible in the future?
I mean, I want to say yes, but that's just one of those, like, I don't really know, like, but I also see, like, I'm solely like a vintage collector, and that's all I have interest in. So that's like, to me, I think probably not.
Yeah.
But it's all, but how there's guys out there that, that collect every Rich and Tone that comes out, and,
which I have to say,
there
I
seems
find
to
that
be
a little bit over the top.
Yeah.
Right now.
But
as much as I love Rich and Tone duck calls, I don't have any desire to own every single color of every single call.
But traditionally, like, and I often also tell people sometimes too, like, you got to think about why things are valuable and why things are collectible. Like, like the old stuff is, there's very limited of it. You can't just go out and buy it.
Yeah. Scarcity on its own, even outside of quality or practicality of an item, can make it valuable.
Yeah. Now, like, to me, I mean, I get like, I get a rush out of, like, I've never done a drug in my life, but I would have to think that the feeling that I get when I unearth a duck call that's been in somebody's drawer for 100 years and never been touched would have to be kind of like doing a drug, that high off of it. And, and I just don't know that you could get that same rush by calling, Final Flight and ordering a new Echo, like to put in your collection. I mean, I don't know there's nothing that really interests me in that, but there's also people, but as far as like, mass produced stuff, I don't really think so, but there's a lot of people that collect contemporary, made decoys and, and contemporary.
There's a company, who's the company that's making like a wooden decoy now? Is it Lifetime?
There's several like out there
that are like, semi-mass produced. I mean, they're more than a dude sitting in his garage.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not for sure.
They're not like, it might be Lifetime that they make. Yeah. They make like, I think it's a wooden decoy, and they have that look of a collectible decoy.
Yeah. But as far as, like bringing, the stuff might be collectible and all that, but
they're not going to be on a collector shelf.
Yeah. But as far as, like the stuff, the vintage stuff that pulls the prices, that the vintage stuff like today does, I don't think so. I mean,
I think it's tough. And I think the same could go, I think the same could go for like baseball cards almost, is that once a field, like a certain sector of this pastime, and it's recognized that things within it are collectible, that beyond that point is when new things become less collectible, and the values will never be there because people are actively collecting them as the things are coming out.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
and
when Purdue was making his duck calls, no one was buying them and putting them on duck calls or on shelves.
No.
But now how's that? I think it's Raggio. I mean, like, his calls look amazing, and there's all these other like really fancy, really cool duck calls that are made, but they're nothing slipping under the radar of coolness, and people get them, and the people who want them have them, and then they're producing enough of
like
them.
I say, I mean, they might be collectible someday, but I mean, the stuff, the old calls that I like to collect. I don't know if I ever got to it earlier. I know you asked. I mean, I've got duck calls that is worth as much as $18,000-$20,000.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'd say the kind of the lowest end that I've got, is probably 500, in between 500 and probably $1,000. But and there's stuff that that you can get for much less. But I'm one of those, like, I'm all about quality over quantity.
Yep.
There's duck call collectors out there that have got 2,000 duck calls.
Oh,
they might have 200 or 300 good ones. Now, I've got I've probably got 265 in my collection, but they're all good ones.
Wow, that's cool. I'll have to see that. I need to. One thing I want to do is I want to get down to somewhere in, like, your neck of the woods, places that have all this history, and probably could even do another one with you at some time. Is just do a bunch in person with places like that, and
yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I want. That's kind of what I wanted to do with the Instagram. Is just me and John, we talk about this a lot. John Stevens, like, there has to be ambassadors for this stuff, and unfortunately, this. Like I said, I'm going to be 40 in December. I'm probably the youngest vintage call collector that is, like, literally serious about it, and, but most of them are in their upper 70s, 80s, so, there's got to be, there's got to be backfill.
Someone to carry it on.
And I'm as guilty as others, but, like, I am literally trying to make a valid effort in, educating, people about this stuff, because I want people to collect it.
Uh-huh.
Like, I tell people all the time, I mean, I don't collect this stuff for the money. Like, if this stuff, all I have in here, if 20 years down the road from now, if it's not worth anything, I really don't care. I mean, because that's not why I collect it. Yeah, I mean, I buy it as an investment. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I don't want to lose my ass on it either. Sure. But I'm going to collect it no matter what. But I want to bring in people, collecting, and like I said, there's a fine line of, like, and how to do it. But I think just putting the stuff out there, and just because one thing, like, if there's so few. You got to think about when like, there's a ton of decoys out there. You can buy decoys, old decoys, just about any day of the week if you want, because, these old decoy rigs and these hunters, they would have 250, 300 decoys, but how many duck calls did they have?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. One, maybe two.
Yeah. So, like, you can good old duck calls are not readily available. You can find some at auctions, and most of it does, changes hands privately. So, people can't get into collecting if they don't know anything about the stuff, and if there's nothing to buy.
Oh yeah. It's not something that you really just stumble into either. I mean, you kind of have to work your way into it.
It's not. And I mean, being a collector, I think, is a personality trait. Like, both of my parents are collectors. My dad is into old cars, and, like, my mom just, not like, they're not into it like I am, this stuff, but they just always like antiques and stuff. But my whole life, I've always been a collector of something. For years, when I was a little kid, it was baseball cards, and it wasn't buying 1986 tops in 1986. I would save my money and I would buy Mickey Mantles and stuff like that. I've just always been into the vintage stuff, and like I say, that just kind of carried over to waterfowl hunting for me.
That makes sense. There's like an air to about it of on the unavailability, in that it's almost like a hunt. I assume that's part of the fun, is like the hunt factor of it. It's like it's why I like to go find asparagus. I don't really like to eat asparagus as much as I like to go find it, or same with the morel mushroom. I love absolutely. The chase of it is more than the search is more enjoyable than the actual end product of it. So
and I mean, like I say, I acquired a duck call back in June that, man, I have been chasing this thing for probably 5 or 6 years now. Like, and it's a great call. It's a Charles Quimby call out of up on the Illinois River Valley, and once I got it, it was like, it's a very good call in my collection, but it was kind of like, it was all about that thrill of hunting that call and getting it.
Yeah.
So as soon as I got it put up on the shelf, guess what I'm doing? I'm after the next one.
Yeah, the little anticlimactic
So
to get it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And but like I say, collecting, it's just fun. Like, and people are just collectors. Like John Stevens, my buddy, he is just if you listen to his mom and dad talk, I mean, he'll collect anything, and he gets rid of nothing. Like his dad talks about, like, you ought to see his Matchbox collection. He's a kid, he collect bottle caps and matchbooks and
wow,
and just, he collects everything, stereo equipment. Obviously his main collecting thing he's always been interested in is vintage old duck calls, and has probably one of the top 2 or 3 duck call collections that exist.
Wow.
And for years, many people didn't know that he had it, but John growing there up in Stuttgart, when as a kid, collecting that stuff,
all right there at your fingertips, basically.
It's just, he was the kid that was into the duck hunting and the duck calling, and there would, people would give him calls, and he got, his, mom's side of the family, he was, was into hunting, and he got his grandpa's old calls and all that stuff. But you have to live in an area. It's going to be very hard to collect duck calls from South Dakota.
Oh yeah,
what I mean?
Everything's long distance.
Got to be found online. Whereas down here, there are no telling where they'll show up. They're because
you probably run into them at a garage sale occasionally.
You can. I'm usually not that lucky.
Yeah.
But there's I usually get them after somebody found them at a garage sale. I have to
so the price went from $5 to $500.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing about it around here is, for his decoys, like, I can't really collect decoys as much as I do calls around here, because all your custom decoys from back in the day was Illinois River, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, then all of the East Coast. Now, as far as duck calls go, Wisconsin had a little bit, Michigan had very few, Minnesota had a decent amount, but your vast majority of all your high-end duck calls, Illinois River, the state of Arkansas, a little bit Missouri, Louisiana, and West Tennessee, and that's where all your valuable calls come from.
Makes sense. The duck calling culture is strong. Even today, I would say stronger in all those places. Like Minnesota is a land of a million duck hunters. But until recently, they didn't have a ton of great callers. Like duck calling.
You got to think about the species.
Yep.
Yeah.
Duck calling has always been a thing of the South. Goose calling has typically been a thing of the North.
Yeah. So, the decoys are all made in areas where, primarily divers, outside of the Illinois River Valley. To find a good Illinois River Valley diver decoy is, those are pretty scarce. A lot of that was mallards, but like your Minnesotas, Wisconsins, Michigan, most of your carvers, those were all people that carved diver, the hunting was mainly diver related.
Yep.
And now, like I say, and there is, down here in the South, there was, I don't really know of any, old decoy makers.
Huh. Yeah, I guess, my limited knowledge, I've associated Minnesota as a pretty good source of that, just from the little bit that I know about it.
Yeah. The Minnesota's got a, great heritage tradition of, old decoys and, probably, more so old decoys and, old boats than duck calls, but there's still some great duck calls. There's some, as far as decoys go, there's, oh shoot, what's that lake up there?
in Minnesota?
Yeah, it's just
There's a few. Swan Lake was a big one. Heron Lake.
Heron Lake. That's the one I'm thinking of. Heron Lake was his
huge duck hunting. I went by that a week ago. I was just past it.
Yeah,
and had to stop.
Yeah,
it.
there's some great decoys from Heron Lake, and the funny thing, and they're considered, like the Heron Lake model, because they, all the different carvers, they all kind of have the same look, and there's kind of an odd looking decoy, but Heron Lake birds are, if you ever get a chance to, or know somebody that's got some old Heron Lake decoys, you might want to take them to lunch.
Befriend them.
Yeah, you might want to take them on a duck hunt and take them to lunch.
That lake was only, it wasn't that far from my hometown. It's actually not far from where it's about almost probably halfway between my hometown and where I live now, an hour and a half away, maybe.
Yeah. If you get a chance on Google, type in the name Joe Marr, last name is Marr. And like I said, he was a Heron Lake carver. And like I said, they're just some great decoys.
Okay, I'm looking him up as we speak here.
Yeah.
That's not the right guy. I'll have to do a little more in depth later on.
Yeah.
I don't think he works as an educator at such and such school.
Yeah, I forget what he did, but he cut. He would go to Sioux Falls too and cut hair. He was a barber, but he was mainly. I don't know if he was from Sioux Falls, but did all of his duck hunting at Heron Lake, or if it was vice versa, and he just went to Sioux Falls for. But
it would make sense because back then, at that point in time, if it's anything collectible, back at that point in time, when he would have been making them. South Dakota would not have been the duck hunting spot. It would have been Minnesota. Would have been the place where the ducks were, and over the last years, that's changed.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And there's also some great Minnesota decoys. A guy by the name of John Tax, TAX, very collectible, very valuable birds.
Huh. That's just something that if you're not growing up, I just didn't have anybody that did it around me and just miss out on it. And it's probably one of those things that, maybe for the better I didn't get into it, but I kind of wish I would have. Yeah. And the thing is now talking to you about it, it makes me that much more interested. So I'm going to, you're probably, leading me.
If you find one bird,
that's what's going to happen is you're going to lead me down this path that I'm going to be Googling these guys tonight. And then, next thing I know, I'm gonna start looking to see where some are, and then it'll go further.
There's a big book. There's a book on Minnesota duck calls, and there's a book on Minnesota duck decoys. There's a guy by the name of Doug Lodermeyer. I think he's from the.
I do know that name actually.
Yeah, he's the author of them, and and they're good books.
Cool. I'll have to check that stuff out and just. It's one of those things I want to be even more just knowledgeable about the history and habits and the things of duck hunting, but also just the people that did it and how they did it. Because I honestly did not. When you told me about the thing about how a duck call was used to locate ducks, I never would have guessed that in a million years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I never would have guessed that. So,
but for me, I don't have a ton of hobbies. I don't even really know that I want to consider myself a full blown sportsman because, I don't bass fish. I don't, I'm not, I don't deer hunt. I don't really turkey hunt. I'm a waterfowler. And everything that, really every aspect of my life is duck related. I wouldn't know my wife if it wasn't for duck hunting.
Perfect.
It's like I can't really think of anything about my life that's not that I got really is from duck hunting. And so for me, it's duck hunting and collecting duck hunting memorabilia.
I dig that. I'm not. Yeah. I was that way until a couple of years ago, and I've expanded a little more just to do some other things. But everybody that I'm friends with, everybody that I hang out with, is a duck hunter, and most of them are like you or me. That we identify as a waterfowler. all the other things I do are just simply because there's not duck hunting going on at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like, I like dirt track racing. I follow, World of Outlaw sprint cars and dirt late model racing. But I mean, that's not really something I participate in, I enjoy watching it. But
when you can squeeze it in, probably.
Yeah. And that all happens when duck season's not in.
Yep.
One of the biggest races of the year, dirt track races of the year is in January in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'd love to go to it. And my dad, tries to get me to go all the time, but it's the second week of January. I mean,
it's not happening.
It'd take the King of England to pull me off the Mississippi River that time of year,
Not happening.
Just not doing it.
It's funny. There's a lot, like, always that kind of stuff happening, whether it's, so like I go to a ton of music concerts, and there's always something, like, it seems like my favorite guys always come nearby in November. It never fails. Like, there's never going to be a way I'm ever going to see them if that's the only time they come. Like, you need to kick your schedule up or back 2 months one way or another, because I just can't ever see them. So,
But like you say, I mean, like all of my friends, and I talked to a few friends from back home, but I mean, very, very few, and they're duck hunters.
Oh yeah,
and down where I'm at now, I mean, that's all I've got's duck hunting friends. I mean, outside, I've got obviously teaching friends from work and stuff, but as far as, like friends that I associate with, it's all has to do with duck hunting or duck calls or.
Wait, what else would you talk about? When it when it means as much to a person and you spend as much time doing it, you don't want to talk about the latest episode of whatever TV show. I mean, like, I imagine you're like me, like everywhere you're driving, you're looking at duck hunting spots, and everything you're thinking about, and boats and blinds. How can we hide the blind better? And God, do we need these many more decoy? I mean, everything is that.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's not a day goes by. I mean, I would say there's not an hour that goes by that I don't think about duck hunting.
Dude, we need to get you up here to the Northland and get your season started a little bit sooner.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be great.
If not, I'll tell you what,
those 2 months before our season comes in and seeing like everybody's stuff, it's brutal.
I see. I'm lucky in that South Dakota we start almost as soon as anybody. And I'll be hunting within an hour of my house until almost mid-January.
Yeah,
for ducks, and our goose season goes until February.
That's phenomenal.
So I'm like, I can just rotate my hunting around a little bit, and because we have some different zones, and we have a long season, and we're not as good as like the Pacific Flyway, but we're okay. Yeah. We're sitting pretty good. So
I got to say, I've got, when it comes to wives, I probably got the best wife in the world, but man, and she never says anything to me about any of my duck hunting or any of this collectible stuff. But if our season was more than 60 days, she might
start to have a few more reservations about it. So what did I get into?
Yeah. Like, I mean, she never barks, but I mean, if she does bark, then I usually it's because I need a barking,
Oh yeah, there's a time where you gotta get back in line a little bit.
Yeah, and that's usually about the last 10 days of season. But man, I'll tell you what, usually within I couldn't imagine our season being longer and all that because, I'll be honest, by the time ours is done, my ass is worn out.
Mm-hmm.
I have people ask me all the time. We could, which we can spec hunt until like the 14th of February.
Yep.
And we might go out and do that a time or two. I mean, but to see these guys that chase these snow geese from February 1st through March and April, I mean, shoot, I'd rather have my ass whipped.
Yeah. I'm not a snow goose hunter. I can't get into it.
Yeah,
I can do it once or twice, but I just don't have a desire.
Yeah, like I said, don't get me wrong. I mean, if you called and said, I've got, I've already got the 6,000 decoys set out. All you got to do is bring your gun and 2 cases of shells.
Yep.
That has to be there in 2 seconds.
Yeah,
but,
it's fun.
But, those. Yeah.
It's just not. It's not my gig exactly. So
no.
It's a little too mechanical. Too many gadgets involved for me.
Yeah. Too muddy.
Oh, that too. Yeah. No thanks. I just don't hate them that bad that I need to be out chasing them that long.
I mean, I guess we probably should with the numbers, but I mean, I'm just not that mad at them, man.
No, I'm not either. I concur. I'll do it once in a while, but it's not gonna be my spring. I'll take photos and I will chase turkeys in the spring and call her good.
Yeah, like I said, we do have, down here in Kentucky and Tennessee, we have an early wood duck and teal season. And if conditions are right, usually around that time though, it's so dry and hot that but that it's not fun.
When it doesn't feel like hunting, it doesn't feel like duck hunting.
It doesn't, and and if conditions are right, I'll go out and all that. But I'm not exactly afraid of snakes, but but I'm not a huge fan of them, and down here, with all the cottonmouths and all that stuff, if you want to find one,
they're there to find.
Yeah, go teal hunting or wood duck hunting in September.
No thanks. I'll take our 10 below boat launches over dealing with cottonmouths. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, like I say, and honestly, the only time we've really got to worry about them is, towards the end of October when we start brushing duck blinds and stuff like that. Because I think I'd have to do the, what is that website? Google that shit or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But I think I'd have to Google it. But I think they say like cottonmouths, they can't be in water under 74 degrees or something like that.
Oh, that's good.
So so by the time hunting season comes in, we don't ever see them. But
long gone. Ugh.
But,
no thanks.
Yeah, and there's a few times that back in my pre-married and pre-kid days, we would go to Reelfoot Lake and wood duck hunt in September, and and I never really did see one, but it's kind of hard to enjoy your hunt when you're constantly looking.
Oh yeah, you were just worried. I'd be worried about my dog too, more than me even. I think.
Yeah,
just nervous if they get bit. Yeah. I don't know how it affects them, but no thanks. I'd be out on that.
Yeah, and I know, like one of our big blinds that we've got in one of our farms, it's very sealed off and everything. Like, we close it up at the end of the season and go in there in January, and I can promise you that I'm never the first one in there every year.
Go ahead. You're more than welcome to be the first one in.
I don't know if it was Kelly or John Ed went in, this year first, and there was a big old snake. And like I said, we never did figure out where the snake was.
Yuck.
But, but I'm also going to tell you, I didn't go looking for it either.
No, he can be on his own. I'd be good not knowing where they were at, as long as I knew that they weren't. That might be more important.
But like I said, we've got them, pretty thick around here. But down around in Arkansas in those rice fields and just the river bottoms in general, the Mississippi river bottoms, and just all these tributaries we got, they're full of those things.
Ugh. Yeah, I've always been there in January, so I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, that might be part of the reason why.
Yeah, if you see one in January, you could pretty much pick it up, and
they're probably like stiff as a board.
Probably stiff. It's not gonna do anything.
I'm not gonna test that theory out, but
no. Yeah, let me know how that works. I'm just guessing.
Poked with a gun barrel would be about the closest I'd get to him.
Yeah.
Oh, cool, man. Well, hey, I'd probably let you run and let our folks here listen. We've talked for 2 hours, I think, and every time I keep trying to limit it hour and a half, and it just seems like everybody is interesting enough to talk to that we blab on for however long it is.
Yeah. So we're passionate about this stuff, like I could, we'll have to do it again. I could talk about this stuff for
one of these days. Maybe during season, I'll try to this year if I can finagle it once we wrap up with seasons here, and maybe I'll buzz down that way and put together a couple hunts and line up a bunch of people to talk to, and it'd be kind of fun to come do some of these in a waterfowl rich area too. So
yeah, it's neat. It's a neat area. There's like I said, there's definitely plenty of I'm not going to say there's great public hunting down around here, but there's public hunting if people want it. That's one thing down here. Like you can always find somewhere to go hunting.
Oh yeah.
You're not gonna, it might not be the best.
You might not be alone.
Yeah, I mean, I spend 90% of my time on public, or I'm sorry, on private ground. So I mean, but if you work hard at it, and you can find ducks on public ground around here. And I've done all the public ground stuff.
Oh yeah.
It makes me appreciate what that I don't have to get up at midnight anymore. And
oh no,
those days are over. If I had to do that stuff, I don't know that I'd even still be doing it. As much as I love it,
it's tough. It's tough on a guy's psyche because you just know you're always worried about who's coming, who's not coming. So
yeah, I don't remember what it was. I did something a year ago. Like I come home and I told the wife, I'm like, like I don't know if it was just because it was so cold out or what, but I'm like, man, I'm not 20 years old anymore.
No, duck hunting is not it's not a young man sport only, but you change your methods.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I've changed how I hunt, definitely. So
yeah.
Part of that goes along with resources, but also just the fact that you're not gonna walk into some of the places. Although maybe I do some of it because I'm probably in better shape now than I was when I was 20. But
yeah,
a lot of folks isn't the typical scenario. So
yeah.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you coming on, especially short notice, and we'll definitely. I want to do this again, no doubt. So,
yeah, we'll do it. Like I say, thanks for having me, and like I say, it's a sad day in the waterfowl world with Tim's passing, and keep all his family and friends and prayers, and I don't know. That's a tough deal there.
Yeah, it's a shock to the system for everybody, really. Just
it is.
You see just the amount of talk about it really kind of goes to show the impact he had on the community. So
yeah,
unfortunate.
All right, brother.
I will talk to you soon and keep in touch. And thanks everybody for listening in.
Yeah, right. We'll do it.
Have a good one.
See you guys.
Bye.